So the first thing I'd like to say is that I'm absolutely exhausted. We arrived at a property this morning. My friend contacted me and said, look, I've got this nice property to show you. Let's go. So in the car we went, and that's about as much information I had about it. On the way out, he gave me a bit of information, detail about it. When we arrived, the chap who's selling the property greeted us, and I said to him, look, before I fire up the camera, can we just have a quick whip around to check the place out just so I can get my bearings? So I think about 2 hours later, we've been all over this magnificent property. And that was my brief introduction. So I said, look, let's hold up. I've got to fire up the camera before midnight or before I check out, because it's been quite a trek. But all that to say that I'm at this magnificent property, which is only a short ride from Caacupé. It was under half an hour drive, but in terms of the road coming out here, I've been told that it's in the winds to have that road asphalted. So the drive from Caacupé is already quite a simple process, but once it's paved out here, it's going to be a breeze. And I've heard that from several different sources, and my friend tells me there are official sources online that confirm that the roads out here will be upgraded, as are a lot of the roads around Cordillera, which is a good thing to know if you're looking around, because it's a place that is in the process of being upgraded. And that really has relevance to when you're looking for properties, because I think there's still opportunities to buy in locations that have kind of not really been over exploited in terms of people investing there. But once the roads are upgraded, well, we know how that works out. It's generally a plus for people who have purchased land there. But where we're actually located is right on the outskirts of Cordillera, and just over the boundary of this property is Paraguay. Now, I've spoken about Cordillera as being, amongst other things, the cleanest department in Paraguay, and definitely one of the other places that can boast being one of the cleanest in Paraguay, at least as it relates to mass cropping, is Paraguay. And so you're looking at it now, right at the boundary of this property, you're into Paraguay. And just over yonder, you're looking at Pirayu, the township over there. So it's in an interesting location, and needless to say, it's one of the best views that you will ever get in at least Cordillera, and definitely anywhere in Paraguay. It's a magnificent view. Now, this property is, I've been told, 16.8 hectares, and the price that I've been quoted is 45 millioni per hectare. Well, that is a very keen price as far as I'm concerned. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you'd see a lot of properties that I've talked about have been from the 100 millioni per hectare upwards. And you would rightfully ask, well, how can this property relate to the other properties that I've looked at in terms of price? And the simple answer is it doesn't, because that's the way things roll in Paraguay. It depends on a whole range of things, not the least of which just how keen people are to sell. I understand that it's a motivated seller for this property. This place is also got some, I guess, challenges for anyone that purchased it, and I imagine that the seller has factored that into the price point. It's an undulating property that runs on the side of, I guess, a cerro, and then goes further down into a ravine, and then some of the most magnificent springs and streams that you'll ever find, with fish, and just magical. So in terms of being able to maximize the space of a property like this, you'd really need to get a topographic map to really identify what you're looking at, because where we're standing at the moment is a relatively flat area, and as we've walked through the property, there's flat areas right throughout the property, but there's other areas that you wouldn't build on. So there's a portion of this land that is there for beauty, and if you wanted to have your own pristine kind of jungle walk, but in terms of being able to maximise the whole property, you probably wouldn't be able to. So that's factored into the price, and it's really what people are looking for. If you're looking for something, you know, really, I guess, like a tropical kind of retreat, well, this would be the ticket. You wouldn't be necessarily putting in a lot of crops or anything like that in a place like this. Very stony land and all things to consider. But if you're looking for one of the best views that you could possibly find, well, I think you've probably found it here. And 45 millioni per hectare, at that price point, I guess there is some fat on the bone to be able to spend a bit of money, because you would have to in order to get to the stage where you could develop the land to the point where you could access it and build something on it. All things to think about when you're investing in a property, and everyone has to do their own sums and work out what really they're after. But just another property to add to your virtual database, and that's what I always talk about. You've got to rack up the knowledge of what's around and make your own assessments. The price point is also reflective of the fact that it's a bigger parcel of land, 16.8 hectares. They're not so common in easy shooting distance to Caacupé. So you're going to struggle to find a piece of land of that size. They're around, but when you get over, you know, something like maybe 10 hectares, perhaps it might be a price point where you might see some significant drop-off in terms of price per hectare. It's not really a hard and fast rule. It's dependent on where you are, but it is a matter of more land, generally better the price. And you know, I think that's reflective here. At 45 millioni per hectare, you're not really going to find any better than that, I wouldn't think. But who knows? Things can always surprise you in Paraguay, and you can never say never. But the other interesting thing about this property is it's, I think, about 400 or 500 metres off a main road. I say a main road. It's. I'll take some footage of it on the way out just to show you. But there's a development at the start of this property that is obviously a lottie development. There's power lines and it's being cleared. So I don't know what the history in terms of the person who's selling this land is, but what you commonly see here is that you'll have a development and they'll clear all of the easily accessible land, the flatter land that they can clear off and lotify, and then the more challenging part of their land they will tend to parcel up as a bigger bit of property and sell like this, and I suspect that might be the case here. So there's some things to consider with that. You're obviously potentially going to have some people adjoining the property if people ever end up building on those lotties. And I say if because there's a lot of developments in Paraguay where they've sold the lotties but nobody's ever built on them. They're everywhere. And it's really kind of a form of banking here. So I wouldn't be surprised if you came back here in years and maybe not a lot's happened there. Maybe it will. Who knows? But one of the benefits is that you'll see that there are power lines. They haven't been run yet, but there are the poles in place. So that's telling me that the power authority has probably got their eye on running power down. So all things going well, the power would be to this property. And all of those things would need to be verified. But if that is the case, well, this is a beautiful bit of land that has accessible power, which is a really important factor. you also have some really great water sources on this property, and if they're putting in a development, I would expect that they would have a town water supply, which is essentially they drive a big well and they supply that particular development. That's the way it usually rolls. So if you're built on here, I can't say for sure, you'd need to check it out, but I would imagine that you'd be able to avail yourself of that water supply if and when it comes online. But all things that need to be checked and rechecked when you're doing anything in Paraguay. And everything that I say on any video and whatever anyone else says on any video, you really need to go away, because all I can do is pass on information that I'm given, and that's really just as a casual observer who rocks up to a property and is given some information. I've been shown a geo-reference map of this property. I haven't checked its currency or validity. All of that sort of thing needs to be verified. A lot of legwork before you even consider buying a property. But my main motivation for bringing you these videos is to hopefully just give you some insight into what some of the price points are, the realistic price points, not the crazy price points. At this price point, I think everybody's getting a good deal. Definitely the person that would be looking for a property like this, 45 million per hectare, happy days. The chap who's selling it, he's obviously happy with that price point. So, and in the process, you're not blowing up the property market. And I'm not going to video too much more of this property because you'll just be walking through bush. The real trick would be to get a topography map, because this magnificent view here is just one of many similar sites on this property. I've walked through and got glimpses as I've been walking through and seen that you can kind of peer through the trees, and if you did a bit of thinning out, you would come across some magnificent building sites. And so it would be a matter of really doing your homework about how this place is laid out, because you want to know that a good portion of it is viable. It's magnificent to have some undulation and running down to some quite dramatic arroyos and rock faces and such things. I think it's the right person. That is heaven. But you also want to know that there's a fair bit of it that's accessible and potentially able to be cleared in a way that you can enjoy it, build on it, maybe put some units or a few dwellings, a couple of families, a few people sharing it. 16.8 hectares is a massive slab of land in my estimation. I know some people have got different scales, but it's a big slab of land and presents some very interesting options. So if anyone's interested in learning more about it, I can put you in contact with the guy that's handling this sale, and then you can go from there. Just do all your homework, all of your due diligence. The other thing you always need to do is really suss out what's going on in neighbouring properties. You can see what's going on as you drive up to this property in regards to the development, and so too you'd really want to have a look at what is happening with the other adjoining properties. It doesn't look like there's anything much going on, but always worth doing your homework. And where we're walking here, all of this, if those trees were just cut down a bit, it'd all be magnificent views. So lots of great building spots potentially to access. Now, just leaving the property where we came in about 10 hours ago, my friend tells me that what I'm actually standing in now is the access way to this property. And you can see over there, there is a peg, a red and white peg. And I'm told that this land here that we're currently looking at on the other side of this fence is a park. It's going to be parkland because there is a development. I'm just going to show you now, and apparently this is going to be public land accessible to those people who are part of that development. So that's public land this side of the fence. Everything on the other side of the fence that I just showed you is that property. And just something to think about. You always have to be mindful of what's being put next to you. If I was ever looking at something like this, I would be reaching out to the people who are in charge of this development that I'm about to show you and just get some understanding about what they're going to put here and what rules, if any, will be in place in regards to things like noise, and just so that you can know what is next to your property and how that's going to all work. And that's just the sign there that's telling us that it's a plaza, public plaza in that area. And what we have here is a series of power poles, and this land through here, as I've been advised, are lotties. They are small parcels of land being sold off. And as I said earlier, there are many such developments all around Paraguay. I personally cannot get my head around the math of how, with the population that Paraguay has and the concentration of the population in Asuncion, how it can be that so many developments could ever be occupied. There's a degree that will be filled by holiday accommodation, weekend accommodation, and that's very common here. These sort of developments often see sort of small quintas that are built for people in Asuncion to get away, but even with all that said, when you look at the amount of such developments, I think it's going to be a long time before you see a lot of them built out. Time will tell. But one of the good things is that because this is on the development whiteboard, that has facilitated it being on the schedule, presumably, of the authority that provides power and presumably upgrades the roads and so forth. So that would be all things that you would need to really do your due diligence on. But the fact that they put those power poles in tells me that there are plans to make this more official. It'd be also interesting to just suss out what the price per lottie is, just to do a little bit of number crunching in respect to what this property is selling for. All things just to ponder and make your own decisions. But all things considered, I've seen properties that aren't anywhere near as good as this that are going for considerably more, but it's all about what people are looking for. Anyone that's interested, drop us a line and happy to hook you up with the guy that is selling the property. But I hope you've enjoyed that. I've got to go home and recover. This has been quite a trek, but a lot of fun. So until next time, take care. Ciao.